8 years ago, I left the city and moved to Tasmania. I wanted to see where my food came from and live a simpler life. I bought a farm and soon after, my partner Sadie joined me.
It's really yummy.
We had Headley and a few years later upgraded to a bigger farm. Then we made a crazy decision to open a restaurant where everything on the menu came from our farm. It wasn't an easy job and sometimes we felt like throwing it all in. We had an issue with the hydraulics plan, didn't match the actual building.
The delays that are happening now.
Yeah, well, every week's costing us money.
Just kind of make me feel a little bit sick.
But we continued to learn from our many mistakes, and Fat Pig Farm has come to life. Our dream is starting to come true. And we'd like you to raise your glass to toast the opening of the kitchen on Fat Pig Farm. At its core, what we're trying to do is a very simple thing, and that is to extend our farmhouse table, to take food that's grown outside these windows and bring it inside this building and prepare it for people to eat. And so, over the course of a year and through 4 seasons, the story of this farm and my little family continues.
You wouldn't believe how much effort I went to.
It's so beautiful.
On the land, our day-to-day lives are guided by the changing of the seasons. But it's actually our soil that feeds us and allows us to live here. It might sound weird, but I've actually been imagining planting wheat for years. So over the course of this next 12 months, we'll be learning how to nourish our soils with more water and fertilise them more naturally. If this works, if we slow the water down and we grow more stuff on this piece of land, this will exist for 100, 200, 300 years. They might even put more of them in. Welcome to a year in the life of Fat Pig Farm.
I love our boys' weekends. Your weak bladder, his dicky ankles and my
Your
dodgy
bad knee.
knees, and we're in bed by 9 o'clock. It's a lot different than it used to be.
And our journey into leaving this land better than we found it. But these things take time. I mean, you know, they're big projects. A lot of them won't happen in my lifetime. And I guess it's about improving the soil for Headley, my son, and for the generations that come after him. Well, at least that's a plan. My name is Matthew Evans. After years as a big city food critic, I bought a farm in Tasmania to better understand what I eat by growing it myself. I built a restaurant right at the top of the farm, but now I want to get a better understanding of what I eats. This means starting from the ground up to improve the health of our soil, our farm, and our food for generations to come. From foodie to farmer to chef to rehabilitator of the land, how hard can it be? It's autumn on Fat Pig Farm. The days are long and the weather is warm and magical. The low hum of pollen-hungry bees fills the air, and the garden is literally producing more food than we know what to do with. But it never goes to waste, because since we opened the doors to the restaurant, our Friday lunch service is attracting more and more attention. Today we're feeding a touring troupe of gardeners from Orange in New South Wales. You're all gardeners, right? You know what happens? We cook what we grow, right? So we grow pretty much everything on your plate. Nature determines when we can harvest. We have some wriggle room, but some weeks, you know, you have to harvest a lot of things. So the menu is determined by the garden. However, this year, it seems that our table fare is only half the attraction, because people have been really interested in the garden itself and how our resident green thumb, Nadia, goes about growing Fat Pig Farm's beautiful veggies. So Nadia works full-time with us. She runs the garden, I guess, according to her principles, which are aligned with ours.
So we've got 70 15-metre beds, which are just for annual vegetable production. And we're focused on organic principles and soil health, because if the soil is healthy and full of life, then whatever's growing in it is going to be healthy and full of life. It's nutrient dense and it's really tasty. And when I'm talking about the soil biology, I'm talking about the ecosystem that's in the ground below our feet. There's bacteria, fungi, millions of organisms that actually do all the hard work of finding minerals and nutrients in the soil. They feed the plants and then the plants feed us.
In the last few years, we've put a lot of effort into looking after the soil that we grow our vegetables in. And autumn is when the garden is at its best. We've got more tomatoes than we know what to do with, tomatillos, capsicums, red and yellow. The garden crew can't pick everything fast enough, and the restaurant team are overwhelmed with the surplus. In fact, this year we've been blessed with more zucchinis than we've ever had before.
There's seasons in the year where there's just total glut. Zucchini at the moment, there'll be tomatoes, all sorts of stuff, cucumbers. And the whole thing is, these plants have been in for months. The effort that goes into the soil to get the plants to grow, to make them healthy. And the last thing we want to do is throw these away.
Thankfully, there's an age-old technique that we use for preserving our excess veggies, and that carries us through less bountiful seasons when the garden eventually slows, and also infuses them with new flavours. Fermentation.
I'm going to take all of these and ferment them in my crock. This is something I use to make sauerkraut. So it's got a water seal, but you can do this in a bucket. And I'm looking for something, it's probably about 1/2 centimetre thick. I guess the thickness is how we're going to use them. What do I want to do with them? I want to put them on a sandwich. I don't want a big chunk. You can flavour it with anything. I want to do it really subtly, just with a little bit of onion. I've got some nice little spring bulbing onions. So I'm going to just do some fine slices of that. You can use any sort of bored onion. Leeks or something like that are probably nicer for flavour, a bit sweeter. And when you think fermentation, fermentation is when bacteria, like lactic acid producing bacteria, same thing that's happening in sauerkraut, same thing that's happening in cheese to a large extent. They're actually getting in and changing the character and making the zucchini, keeping the flavour of the zucchini, but making it more complex. And things that are fermented, it's amazing, like tea's fermented, chocolate's fermented, coffee's fermented. Lots of the things we love to eat are fermented, and that's because they get a more complex, interesting, savoury, mouth-watering flavour. Rightio. So what I need to do is just add salty water to that. And then I'm going to cover it with a loose-fitting lid if you're at home, just something that the flies and bugs can't get in. But it doesn't matter if there's a little bit of air, oxygen exchange. There we go. So the water's pretty much right on the top of them. A couple of pieces maybe poking out, but they'll sink down a bit as I put the weights on with the lid. And then this one's got an airlock, a water lock, so it lets, as it ferments, you get carbon dioxide produced and gases produced, and the air can get out, but it means fresh oxygen can't get in. So I might put a bit of water into that little gap. Seeing as I've got it. Beautiful. All right, I'll just leave that on the bench, not in the sun. Ideally sort of in a pantry, 20 degrees. I'll leave it on the end of that bench and come back to it. Taste it every day. Maybe just make sure the top zucchini are actually submerged by tomorrow, and it should ferment in about 3 days' time, ready to jar up, put in the fridge.
Now, while the garden's bumper autumn crop looks great on its own, my plans for transforming Fat Pig Farm's sustainability this year are more big picture. And the first big issue in making those plans a reality is finding a way to manage what happens to our soil when it rains. Our farm is at the bottom of a gully, so heavy rainfall can leach all the soil nutrients at the top of the property and deposit them in the paddocks below, overloading that soil with minerals. And then there's the question of finding the best way to manage our farm animals and the effects that they have on our soil. So I asked our friend Hannah, who's a permaculture expert, to help us come up with a plan to return our soil to health without feeding it chemicals. But first, she needs to map out the property to hopefully solve some of our problems.
What I think we could do better with the paddocks and the animals is having more wind protection and shade.
Yeah.
But also more fodder. So up there's where our big blackberry problem is as well.
Yeah.
And we have so much water here in winter. I can't use this entire northern side of the property is pretty much too boggy to use.
Yeah.
And then in summer, it gets too dry.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether we can manage water differently.
Sure, so we have to make sure that we really use our patch
intensely and really wisely to get that yield, but also have a regenerative approach. So rather than degrading that soil and taking, you're setting it up so it can be almost self-replenishing with your support and help to keep producing these good, nutritious yields indefinitely.
Yeah.
The ultimate goal of any farm is to grow more quality produce for less money. So sustainable farmers really can't waste any resources that help them do that. What I really need is some kind of approach to conserving our rainwater runoff.
What I'm interested in is doing things, something called off-contour swales. So if you're coming downhill, you'd have a trench.
Yep.
It fills up that swale and sinks into the soil. This is where you can plant a tree, and that would be imitated down here as well.
So at the moment, the water's just going straight down the hill?
Yeah, straight down.
The fastest possible route out of there. And we want to slow it, or...?
Slow, yeah. So you want to slow, sink and store it in the soil.
Hannah's idea here is to terrace this side of the hill with shallow water channels or swales so we can harness our rainfall, enriching the whole hillside with water and nutrients.
It's tree cropping and animal grazing, and then you've got the beautiful passive water management with your off-contour swale system. It's as integrated as you can get, and it's gorgeous.
When it comes to making the most of Tasmania's beautiful autumn days, our growing tribe of Wessex saddleback pigs love nothing more than lying around in the dirt. But as you can see, they can take a heavy toll on our soil. So I'm hoping Hannah can give me some tips on the best way to manage their impact.
This is the breeder paddocks where the big pigs live.
Yep.
And wherever I see bare earth, I just think, I'm damaging the soil.
Yeah.
They're only getting maybe 4 or 6 months break.
Yeah. For the space that you're currently using, really you've got too many pigs for it. And so ideally you have more space available to you so you can rest longer than that 4 to 6 months.
A little bit of pig's a good thing and a lot of pig's a bad thing. They're supposed to make me money. Pigs supposed to be making me money, not costing me money.
While Hannah is here, I need some advice on an issue that affects virtually every Tasmanian farmer: blackberries.
Well, at the moment it doesn't look like a problem because you can eat them, but we're losing the battle, I can tell you that.
Blackberry bushes are a weed that compete with grasses for soil nutrients and can become a fire hazard when they multiply. And our farm is literally infested with them.
We've tried slashing because we don't really want to poison them.
Slashing is great, especially if you have really massive towers of blackberries, but it can often spread them and help them germinate even further afield. And so with good management, you can use certain breeds of goats, and they love eating all the fresh growth over and over and over again until it wears it down. So it's a multi-year process, not one season.
Not one season.
Not one season, sorry.
It's like more and more work.
Hannah's given me a lot to think about. If I'm going to future-proof the health of our farm, I'll need to rest paddocks longer while making use of new ones, so I'll need more fences. I've also got to plant more trees and buy some goats to control our blackberries. Hannah's plan won't be cheap, but if it all works, we'll have a much more sustainable farm with better produce for many years to come.
All right, let's get on with it. We've only got a year.
Let's do it.
10 years.
Now, while I haven't got any goats yet, I'm going to tackle our blackberry problem one dessert at a time.
One of the things I love to eat is a thing called a fool. It's essentially a mousse. It's a little bit of custard mixed with a little bit of cream mixed with lots of fruit. And those blackberries, they're everywhere around the property, and I want to serve some of them for pudding. So I need to make my custard. I use about a pint of milk. This one's going to be flavoured with lemon thyme. And what I'm going to do is thicken my custard using corn flour and eggs. It's the old-fashioned way of making custard. It's not fancy like an anglaise, that thin, sort of barely set custard that you get in posh restaurants. This is like an earthy, hearty, thick custard. So that's that. Oh, that's good on its own. While it cools, I'm going to go pick the blackberries, come back, and then this should be cool by then, I can actually finish the dish. Like falling in love. There's a risk of being hurt, but it's worth the risk. These lovely blackberries, I just want to cook them down, soften them right up, and add just a tiny bit of sugar.
It's not like jam where I have to cook it till it sets. I just want it till the blackberries, instead of being like this, are like that, essentially, almost soup. The smell of the blackberries now is amazing compared to, you wouldn't really smell anything with the raw fruit. And this will just smooth it all out. So the end result is a fool that's really moussey and light in the mouth, and it's kind of there and vanishes and makes you want more. It's my custard, which is cool now, and it's gone quite stiff. I actually put it through a sieve. It's not absolutely vital. I just want to make sure that it's smooth. I've gone to all the trouble to sieve the fruit. I'd hate to bugger it up by a little bit of chunky custard. So in theory, it's equal quantities of custard to whipped cream to fruit. Some people just make a fool by adding whipped cream to pureed fruit, and that's nice. But to me, it's the custard that makes it. It gives it a different mouthfeel. It has a richness, it has a moussiness. Just a scattering of the berries that we saved. Oh. Revenge, blackberries, revenge. How sweet it is. It's going to take a long time to kill the blackberries this way. If our gardens could talk, I'm sure they'd tell us that the autumn months in Tassie are the best time to do some growing, because the soil will be staying warm for a number of weeks yet, which always makes for bumper crops. In fact, a farm like ours is only as good as its soil. So this year, we've set out to make the health of our soil top priority. Our new gardener, Nadia, is going to help me gather some soil samples for testing. What are we actually going to test for?
I guess it's to give us a better understanding of the nutrient profile or the mineral profile in the soil, and also other things like the composition, the pH and the organic matter levels.
Rightio, number 2, done. Nadia needs me to collect 80 samples across the entire farm, from the hills to the pig paddocks. 9 to go, 7 to go, 2 minutes to go. So, 80 samples all around the farm. We'll see what we're doing over the next 12 months, if it makes any difference. While collecting soil samples is probably nobody's idea of fun, hard work is just a way of life on a farm. And at this time of year, no one works harder than our bees. As the bees make their honey, they pollinate many of our garden crops, giving us heaps of veggies in the process, so we want them to be happy. But I think Sadie is a little worried about their work-life balance.
So, I've been thinking about the bees, and I don't think they're supposed to be as angry as they are.
I hate them, I got to say, because I get stung more than anyone, I reckon. Bit me up the nose.
And that shouldn't be happening.
They just come and land on me.
And you're allergic.
Yeah. Our beehives are the standard square variety, known as Langstroth hives. This humble design was single-handedly responsible for the world's commercial beekeeping industry. But Langstroth hives can sometimes affect the bee's behaviour, favouring the beekeeper over the actual bees themselves. All right, so what's the plan?
Well, I thought I might go and have a chat to Anton, just because he's got a lot of experience as a backyard beekeeper, and I know he's got a different style hive to this. So that's my plan.
All right. So Sadie, our queen bee, is off to Hobart. Our good friend Anton uses a hive that's more open plan, that simulates the bees' natural environment. And apparently, they're more zen.
So, what's going on with your bees?
I've had them for a long time, but they're very angry bees. Like, they're quite vicious. So what I'm curious to know about is whether you can calm bees down with a different hive.
We've got several what they're called top bar beehives. So instead of the bees creating wax and comb in a kind of a rectangular frame that you'll see in a standard beehive, they're allowed to draw down their own comb, basically in a parabola, so the shape that they would build if they were building in a tree or wherever they normally come from.
While Anton's bees are supposed to be a lot more laid back, it pays to be protected.
Hello, bees.
A function of this hive is the Langstroth, you've got boxes piled on top of each other, and as the hive grows, you add another box on top.
Yep.
This is all operating horizontally. So as the hive grows, I move this board here, which is like a end wall, and I can move that wall out and expand and contract the hive. The biggest drawback with these top bar hives is it takes a lot of energy to make wax. So it takes about 5 spoons of honey to make 1 spoon of wax. So when you're harvesting, you're not going to get as much honey out of a top bar hive. That's just the basic physics of the situation. Now, why you're using the smoke is you're kind of simulating a bushfire. All the bees are now going, oh, my hive might burn down. So they're going down, they're actually eating honey now and getting prepared to abandon ship. This next frame, I think we're into the sweet and sticky business. Oh, look at that. That is getting heavy. It's full of capped honey either side.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Do you want to feel the weight of that, Sadie?
I do. Whoa, that's really heavy.
Yeah.
That feels like half a kilo of honey in there.
Oh, at least. There's a nice jar of honey in that.
Because the design of Anton's top bar hives mimics the environment that bees are accustomed to in nature.
Woohoo! This is why you keep bees.
If we can build some of our own, I'm hoping our bees may finally be able to relax.
Well, this is as fresh as honey can get.
Oh my gosh.
That is amazing. Tastes completely different from my honey.
Each honey's a product of its environment and product of the season as well. Maybe we should make you a little snack pack today, Sadie, so you can take it back to the farm.
I would love that. Thank you.
While Sadie is in town, I've got an experiment I'd like to try using the honey we've already collected.
We get heaps of honey from the hives. And this is a couple of litres of Sadie's honey that we haven't used in months. So what I want to do is have a crack at making mead. Mead's honey wine. It's been made for thousands of years. It's probably one of the first alcoholic beverages. So this honey's crystallised, so it's quite stiff after being in a container for a while. Just have to scoop it out. Yay. And the only way you can get it to ferment is by adding water. About 4 times as much water as there is honey. And I'm using warm water, not hot. I want to kill the yeasts and all those lovely good bacteria in there. I need to actually just dissolve the honey a little bit. And this process is actually also adding a lot of air to it. It's activating all those wild yeasts. The fragrance of the honey is quite remarkable. And if I don't finish soon, all the bees will come and find me. I reckon they can smell it from about 3 k's away.
Mead supposedly originated in Greece, and its accidental discovery was probably a beehive that filled up with rain and then fermented naturally. It's had a long history with celebrations, and it's thought that the term honeymoon actually came from the medieval European custom of gifting newlyweds enough mead to last a month.
This big glass jar is just a fancy fermenter. Most people use just a plastic jerry, but the important thing is this. This is an airlock, so a little bit of water goes in the middle there and it lets the gas out, the carbon dioxide out, but no fresh oxygen in. Rightio. So I'm going to leave that open for the first week. All this air, it's great. It lets lots of oxygen into that yeast that's been dormant sitting in the honey. After a week, I'm going to add a little bit of water to the airlock and that'll start closing it off. So we're just fermenting using whatever oxygen is left in the bottle there. I'll put it somewhere inside the building here, roughly 20 degrees. It'll ferment nicely. Could take up to 18 months to ferment, but I'm hoping this one will, maybe, you could probably start looking at it after about 3 or 4 months.
Since I moved my life to the country, I've really learned that on the land, patience is worth it.
Hola, pigs.
Every day, the more care and craft that we put into growing our own food, the better it tastes. So, while I'm not sure what kind of challenges we'll face over the next 12 months as we try to transform the health of our soil, our farm, our food, what I do know is that it's not about quick fixes or shortcuts.
Beautiful. How are you?
This land is a part of our family now, and for it to thrive, it needs our love.
You reckon? Oh. I thought it was all right.
Every plant has got that quality of sort of giving back to the soil.
Healing the soil while growing perennial things for the kitchen.
If you've got good boundary fences, you don't mind them getting into your garden every now and again.
I definitely don't want them in the garden.